Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. This week is week 3 of the sew along for my new pattern, the 1950 Sisters Dress pattern. I actually recreated this classic white Christmas film costume way back in 2013 from a blog, and I got so many requests for the pattern, but I was just at a really busy phase in my life when I couldn't make new patterns. So this year I made it a priority because you can not only make the classic white Christmas inspired look with it, but you also have options for sleeveless and long sleeves and other things like that you can see on my website. If you're following along right now, I would love to see your costumes. Go ahead and tag me Edelweiss Patterns on social media. So we're starting out today using all the pieces that we're going to need for the lace bodice. You see I've cut them out. It's the overlay bodice front, the overlay bodice back, the sleeve, and the sashes. So since I have cut everything out, we're starting with the stay stitching. And with stay stitching, of course, you want to go from the shoulder to the center, so you don't do it all in one fell swoop. You're going to go halfway, meet at center front, and then cut your threads and do that from the other side. And the reason for stay stitching is just to make sure that the neckline does not get stretched out of shape while you're making the darts, because otherwise it can really mess with the neckline. And so now I'm doing the stay stitching for my back pieces as well. The next step is to stitch the darts in the bodice. So I'm sewing with a size 12, so I'm going up to the size 12 dart and marking it. And with my darts pinned in place, I'm going to go ahead and stitch them. Now I'm trimming the excess down to about 1/4 inch, and then I am going to finish that with a zigzag stitch. And you can see it looks really nice and clean with the finish there. The next part is to pin the bodice back pieces to the bodice front at the shoulder seams and stitch. So I've pinned them there, and I'm going to stitch them with my typical 5/8 inch seam allowance. It's also worth noting I am not showing you guys the pressing on this one. Depending on what sort of a lace you have, you may or may not be able to press it at all. With this type you can, you just want to use a very low heat setting and a press cloth. So I've trimmed that shoulder seam down to about 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to finish it with my zigzag. Okay, so here we come to the neckline. If you want to take the easy way out, I do not blame you. Just go ahead and make some bias binding out of your leftover foundation fabric, which is like your taffeta or your satin. I'm doing the full-on classic white Christmas look, which is going to be a little more tricky. So you want to cut out a piece of lace, which is the length of your neckline, by approximately 1.5 inches. The size of the piece is going to be a little bit different depending on the width of your scallop, which is why there's not a pattern piece for this. I've measured my neckline circumference, and it comes out to 19.5 inches, which is what I have measured off here. So with my 1.5 inch strip cut, you can see that I'm now going to go around the scallops and trim off the excess. If you have a double scallop, you can go ahead and make the piece a little bit wider. It just depends on the fabric that you selected for this project. Okay, so with the excess fabric all cut away, I am laying this on top of the right side of the lace bodice. I'm just overlapping and pinning in place. And you can see it's all pinned and ready to stitch. Now this is going to take some careful work. You definitely want to set your machine to a wide and narrow zigzag stitch. And you want to stitch on the inside of the scallop, so the scallop that's the closest to the garment, and you want to follow the curve of the lace scallop there. I've done this a lot, that's why I'm going kind of fast here. I've actually made this costume for many performers over the years. It's ended up on a lot of stages, but you can see that it looks really nice and clean. And on the inside, I have trimmed down the extra fabric from the foundation bodice, from the lace bodice, and it just has a really nice clean finish. So you have done the hardest part, and now we're just going to go ahead and stitch the side seams. So I've pinned the side seams, very basic, 5/8 of an inch. And then I have trimmed it down to 3/8 of an inch, and I'm now finishing it with a zigzag stitch. You can of course use a serger if you prefer that way. Okay, so I've just temporarily laid it over the top of the strapless bodice. It's not attached yet. I'm just setting that aside while I work on the sleeves. So pin the sleeves together at the side seams, stitch, trim, and zigzag, and you're going to end up with a finished product that looks like this. I've also pressed them. Okay, now place a row of gathering stitches along the top edge of each sleeve and pin the sleeve into the bodice, matching the side seams and pulling up the gathering stitches as necessary until the sleeve fits perfectly into the arm's eye. So I'm just putting the gathering stitches on the top half of the sleeve. Okay, so you can see it just has a nice curve to it now that the ease stitchings are in. So I'm lining up the sleeve side seam with the bodice side seam, and I'm pinning in place. You want those to match up exactly. And then I'm just going to continue to pin the rest of the sleeve into the bodice, and I will pull up those gathering stitches as necessary, making sure that it fits smoothly but that I don't actually have any gathers, because this is supposed to be a straight sleeve cap and not a gathered one. So here it is, it's all stitched nicely, and then I'm going to trim the excess down. And as usual, I am finishing those seams. This seam is going to be visible, slightly visible from the exterior of the garment because lace is semi-sheer. And as a result, you just really want to make sure that you've trimmed it down nicely and that it's neatly finished. And there we have it. So the sleeve is in. And for view A, finish the sleeve with a narrow hand-sewn hem. So hemming on lace is not extremely easy, but that is okay. I have done this one a lot. This is the exact fabric that I used when I used to make this for customers. So I've had a lot of late night sewing practice on this. And I'm just doing kind of a back stitch. I'm making it a very tiny stitch on the outside and then a longer, wider one behind. And so you can see the inside once it's all finished now. Okay, so our lace bodice is completely done. On a flat surface, lay the bodice foundation down first. Lay the overlay on top, matching up the bottom edge and the back openings. Pin along these edges. So that's what I've done. I have my foundation bodice that we sewed last week in week 2. And this is going to take some careful work. You just want to make sure everything is smooth. There are no puckers or wrinkles in between the 2 layers. So when you start up by matching up your corners, you really can't go wrong because you know you have something solid to go off of. Okay, so the next thing I'm looking to match up are the side seams. The way I like to do it is just match up all the things that you know have to work first, and then once you've got those things in place, you can go in between the seams and do the easy pinning, which is where you have everything marked and you know where to go. You can see that I'm also going to match up the darts with the princess seams from my foundation bodice. My nails and my dress match. I'm just noticing that on the camera here. Okay, so back on the other side, I've now matched up that back corner and back edge as well, and I believe we are ready to stitch. Okay, so here we go. You really can't go wrong on this part as long as you make sure there are no wrinkles or gathers. As long as you have done a good job pinning, everything should come out perfectly. It is just about done here. This is the most exciting part. So you're going to lay it out flat again, smoothing out any wrinkles, and you want to pin the lace overlay to the foundation bodice along the foundation bodice neckline. So this is a little bit tricky, but you can do it, don't worry. Start by lining up the things you know have to work. So we're lining up the side seams again along the foundation bodice edge. Once you have the side seams pinned, you can move on to the back. Make sure everything matches up. I'm now doing the side seam on the other side. And then on the center back edge. Now, once you have this pinned in place, you can either just tack it by hand, so take your needle and thread and tack it at the important places, or if you've worked with a lot of lace before and if you feel confident that the lace you have is not going to get too stretched out of shape if it goes under a machine again, you can go ahead and actually literally stitch with your machine all the way along the curve of the foundation bodice neckline. Because I have made so many of these dresses for customers in the past, I know that I can do that with this taffeta and this lace. So that's what I'm going to do as soon as everything is pinned in place. You really want to make sure you don't let any wrinkles in. Okay, so I have stitched it on my machine, and this is what it looks like. It's a very clean, professional finish on the inside, and your bodice is completely done. The next week is week 4 of the sew along, where we are going to attach the circular skirts, and that is the last part of the dress assembly. So this was a little trickier today. I want to thank you guys for hanging with me, but it's really a great pattern to work with. Just a lot of different options you can make with it, and if you go to edelweisspatterns.com, you can see more of them. So I'd like to thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.